Everyone, welcome to the Pizza Buffet live here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel. This is part of the Hammer Betting Network and powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I'm Rob Pizzola. Thanks to everyone who joins me here this morning. Pretty excited this morning. Ferrari got a win in Singapore, finally breaking the Red Bull streak. But we're on to the NFL now. Just a few notes. First and foremost, Right Angle Sports is going to be releasing a play shortly. So that will very likely have an impact on this stream today, one way or another. The one thing about this is I'm not trying to give out picks that I gave out earlier in the week. This is very much a stream of right now, if I had to play anything, compare my numbers against the current market at Pinnacle and lock in anything that I can. Now, with that said, historically, this has been not great for me in terms of picking games. If we look at my record, minus 7.9 units, minus 2.6% ROI over the course of, this will be now the third year of doing this and tracking on betstamp. So I would highly encourage those who watch this on a regular basis to try to get in your bets earlier in the week. I do a stream every Sunday night right here on this Forward Progress YouTube channel, 8 p.m. Eastern time with Clive Bixby, where we look at the Pinnacle openers and we predict which way we think those lines are going to move. Anyone who tuned in last week probably ended up with some very, very, very good numbers on this week's games. Those of you who are betting like $20, $50, $100, even $200, $300, $500, you don't have to wait till Sunday. If anything, you're doing yourself a disservice by waiting until Sunday. Looking at Pinnacle limits right now, we have $75,000 on sides, $50,000 on money lines. They're pretty confident in their numbers at this point. So again, try to get in a little bit earlier in the week. I don't know if this was a mistake or not with the fresh shave, but my wife could no longer handle the beard. So we're in. If it ends up being a losing day, I can blame her. Pass the blame on elsewhere. Also, I'm doing this stream live. I'm trying to focus on this as much as possible, trying to break down the games. If you see any piece of breaking news, throw it in here in the chat. Anything that may have moved the market, whether that's a Right Angle Sports release, anything else, throw it in here in the chat, and I'll talk about it as we get over towards all these games in rotation number order. Last thing I will say, Pinnacle, great sponsor for us. I often preach line shopping here on Forward Progress. Everything I do, I preach line shopping. And I'll just show an example of why Pinnacle is extremely valuable right now. If I bring up my betstamp screen at the moment, and again, you can check out betstamp as well, betstamp.app, or download it on Android or iOS. But if I change my odds settings to show everything in my state or my province of Ontario, and I go to the NFL board right now, and I do a quick refresh here of all the lines, and just quickly search Pinnacle, you'll see the amount of times Pinnacle is going to light up on the board. In fact, in every single game, Pinnacle has the best line somewhere, whether that's the spread, the total, first half number. And if I scroll all the way down, you're going to see that. So this is one example of why you should use multiple sports books for one in line shopping, but definitely Pinnacle being one of those sports books. So bet smart, bet Pinnacle. They've been around for 25 years now. And use code HAMMER, HAMMER, if you do sign up for Pinnacle in Ontario, as it does help support the show. You must be 19 plus, not available in the US. And as always, please play responsibly. Okay, I'm just going to reset this here in terms of getting my Pinnacle odds. And then we're going to go through game by game, rotation number order, top to bottom of the screen. And again, I'll give my numbers on the game, what my edge is. I think we're going to be locking in several plays today. Now, before everyone gets too excited, see like a bunch of plays being locked in, what's going to happen here is, in all likelihood, I don't want to say I'm going to lose, but let me explain this a little bit further. I'm locking in a bunch of plays because either I think the market hasn't moved enough on some games, or there's been market resistance on some games. Either way, proceed with caution. Play responsibly with everything. As we do see the RAS pick that goes out is the first half under in the Packers and the Falcons. All right, guys. let's get into it, guys and girls, I should say. Pull up betstamp again. First game on the board, Chargers and Titans. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this game. Chargers without Austin Eckler. I'm a big fan of Josh Kelly. It'll be interesting to see what he does replacing Austin Eckler there, who's been like a touchdown machine over the past couple of years. Eric Kendricks out on defense for the Chargers as well. Joey Bosa will play. That's the big news. I don't know the extent of his health, but he's expected to play. On the Tennessee side, DeAndre Hopkins is going to play after like being, I guess, like a true 50-50 at one point in the week. Their left guard, Peter Skoronski, is out. Defensively, they're missing a couple of starters. Christian Fulton and Amani Hooker are out. Christian Fulton had a horrible game last week. You could tell he was playing hurt. Caleb Farley, remembers, also on the list. So pretty big issues in the secondary for the Chargers and the Titans. Looking at the game spread right now, 2.5 juice towards the Chargers. Pinnacle's at 45 total. Rest of the market is at 45.5. Again, I don't have an edge on this game. Lean Chargers, lean over, but those are just like very, very small leans as I'm very close to the actual price of the game. Be interesting to see. The most interesting thing for me in this game is whether Ryan Tannehill can rebound from last week. I bet the Titans against the Saints last week. I watched a lot of the game. Tannehill looked cooked on throws 15 yards downfield or more. He was 1 for 8, 16 yards, no touchdowns, 3 picks. He had a 0 passer rating on those throws. That was his worst since week 11 of 2016. He definitely did not inspire any faith. And with injuries on the offensive line, at least at left guard, I don't know necessarily how this offensive front is going to hold up. They gave up a 20% pressure rate to the Saints last week, gave up 3 sacks. That just doesn't bode well. So I think what you're going to see in this game is a very heavy dose of Derrick Henry in the running game. That might work for them, as the Chargers have historically struggled in defending the run. Last week, not the best run-stopping performance, but in previous years, they've been abysmal. I think they were 29th in success rate last year, stopping the run. Other side of things, what will the Chargers do on offense with Eckler out? Hopefully they don't just keep pounding the ball up the middle. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. They wanted to do that last week against Miami. Obviously, new offensive coordinator and Kellen Moore, but I would just rather see the Chargers throw the ball on this bad Tennessee secondary. You look back to the game last year that they played, and there was a lot of success from Herbert throwing the ball on this defense. Passed 42 times for 313 yards. They passed 66% of the time in that game. If the Chargers come out with that game plan, I do like them. However, I'm just like, didn't bet this at any point over the course of the week. It's not even like the line is out of range right now or anything like that. Appreciate it so much. For those of you who are in the chat right now, just smash that like button down below. It helps people find our content in real time, elevates it to the top on YouTube. So just take 2 seconds, smash the like button. And if you're not subscribed here on Forward Progress, do so as well. Come on, guys, 29 likes. Pick it up for the pizza man, as Hunter says. Really appreciate anyone who can do that. All right, on to the next game. Green Bay Packers and Atlanta Falcons. I've talked about this game a little bit in the media I've done this week. And Will, yes, that was the first game breakdown. This is just on to the second here, Green Bay, Atlanta. I'm going top to bottom, rotation number order, as I usually do. This one hit 3. The number has hit 3. Very few 2.5s left on the board. Total at 40.5, juiced under at Pinnacle. Again, Right Angle Sports just released the under in the first half of this game. If I had to play current spread, it would only be Green Bay at this price, because now you need Atlanta to win by 4 to win your bet. Very, very small edge on over 40.5 plus 101, 0.15%. I'm not going to play that. So again, this is likely going to be a pass here. Obviously, the market has moved quite a bit out towards Atlanta, and that's big injuries on offense for Green Bay. Aaron Jones is out. I'm not a fan of A.J. Dillon. I don't think he offers much in the passing game. I think that's a pretty steep downgrade. Christian Watson is out. I don't know if I have a status update on David Bakhtiari yet at left tackle, but there's a decent chance he might miss this game as well, with a different playing surface in Atlanta than what he's accustomed to in Green Bay. there is a pretty strong chance that he will not suit up here. Atlanta, I haven't seen a status update on Jeff Okudah yet, but they're healthy outside of that. And the cornerback group is pretty deep aside from that. AJ Terrell, Trey Flowers, D. Alford, Mike Hughes. So no real injury concerns here. And that's why you see the market push this out all the way to where it is. I'm fairly high on Green Bay this year, but I do think that all these injuries make this like the correct line. I'll be rooting for the Falcons today from previous bets. But at this point, it's just gone beyond where I think it should be. Very good numbers for Jordan Love last week. Now, that was against the Bears defense that is very, very bad. I'll get to that shortly. Hit some big plays, but really his success rate wasn't great, 38%. That was 23rd amongst all quarterbacks last week. So hit some big plays, but ultimately wasn't extremely consistent. I'm high on the Falcons defense this year. I talked about it last week in the breakdown against the Panthers. Last year, they couldn't get any pressure on the quarterback. Actually, not even just last year. It's like been for several years now. I believe they've been last in pressure rate for the last 2 seasons, but they were much better a week ago. They signed Calais Campbell, Caden Ellis. The front seven is much improved. They can get after the quarterback. And on the other side of things, think about matchup advantages, right? In terms of Green Bay, where they've been exposed on defense for several years now is in the run game. They're facing a very good rushing offense. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Cordero Patterson back in the mix this week as well. The passing game for Atlanta leaves a lot to be desired, but if Desmond Ridder doesn't have to do a lot, I think that this can be a successful matchup for him. So nothing on this game right now, just trying to explain all the market move towards Atlanta. But yeah, if forced to, like if you said, Rob, you got to play something on this game right now, I'd probably take Green Bay +3. But it's definitely not worth going for. Yeah, this is going to be a season with the Bakhtiari references. But yeah, it was pretty telling last year that when they played on turf, he was not comfortable with that, and he sat a lot of those games. It seems like that's going to be the case a lot this season as well. Indianapolis Colts and Houston Texans, third here on the rotation number order. So market sits at +1, -104 at Pinnacle. Total in 40. In some spots, 39.5 juice to the over at Pinnacle. This will be my first play here of the day. This is a 2.1% edge on Indy -104. +1, -104, the same on the money line. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to lock in a $50 base unit on both the money line and the +1. So it ends up being a 1-unit play. We're just taking some on +102 and some on +1 on the Indianapolis Colts here. Ooh, do we get an error there? Odds have changed to +104. Sure. Let's go to the +104 here. All right. So, injuries are a big thing in this game. In specific, anyways, I'll get this locked in and verified very shortly. Injuries are big in this game. In specific, we look at Houston's offensive line already without 3 starters. They'll be without their left tackle, Laramie Tunsil, today. You have your starting quarterback, C.J. Stroud, dealing with a shoulder injury. Now, I'm not sure that matters at all because there's probably a case to be made that Davis Mills, who's the backup there, is better than C.J. Stroud right now, or at the very least, it's not a downgrade. Remember, they have Case Keenum there as well. But also Houston without both starting safeties, Jimmy Ward, who came over in the offseason, and Jalen Petre, both out for this game. So pretty depleted squad altogether in terms of what they're throwing out there today. And you look at Indy, likely without Quentin Nelson on the offensive line. They elevated an offensive lineman from their practice squad yesterday. But the matchup, I think, with the Colts front seven against this Houston offensive line is something that they can very easily take advantage of. Now, the Colts defense is nothing to write home about, especially in the secondary. But this isn't like a Houston team that can exploit that weakness. If you go back to last week, the Jags can exploit the Colts secondary because the Jags have good pass catchers, great quarterback. I just don't think Houston is there. So I really think Houston's going to struggle to move the ball in this game. I think Anthony Richardson's the better of the two quarterbacks. He obviously is facing a much tougher challenge this week after the Jags defense a week ago. But ultimately, I just don't agree with this number with the amount of injuries that Houston has on the offensive line and the challenge in terms of moving the ball. Earlier in the week, definitely could see the cases for Houston, but as this injury report progressed over the course of the week, I think it's kind of disastrous at this point. Is someone actually hitting Pinnacle on the release right now? That would be pretty funny. I doubt this has anything to do with me if it's happening in real time right now. Just for the record, the people who are playing into this market right now are doing so at very, very high limits. But yes, Pinnacle moved, and I will have to lock in a slightly worse price here, but it'll be locked in. Or I'll just put it all on the +1. Either way, I will have that adjusted as we go forward. Okay. Seahawks and the Lions here. Yeah, whole market's moving. Circa to -1. Pretty hilarious, actually. Just the timing. I don't think it's anyone that's watching this. At least if it is, they have to have pretty deep pockets. Whole market moving. Circa limits pretty large right now as well. Okay. Although this game's like 30 to 50K on the spread. Lions and Seahawks. I should point out, by the way, just want to point this out before I even get to Lions and Seahawks. With this market move of Indy now to +1 -114, that basically takes me to no edge. Just so you're aware of like price sensitivity in the NFL, very different betting that game at close to even money than -114. So you don't have to chase numbers regularly, but be very price sensitive when you're betting the NFL. I know that's difficult for some people to grasp, and they're like, it's still +1, but the risk changes quite substantially in that spot. I wish that would have hung around for longer, unfortunately. Seattle and Detroit. Okay, market is 5 here at Pinnacle, 4.5 everywhere else. I will say this -5 is pretty much the exact same as a 4.5. The difference between 4.5 and 5 is very small. Pinnacle does have a drop-down bar, which you can use to adjust the game spread. And the total is 47, which is a key number for totals. Second play incoming here, 1.34% edge on Detroit -5. I'm going to go ahead and play that for 3/4 unit, 78 to win 75. And that is locked in. All right. Very big splits on this game this week. Obviously, by this time, you know about the Seattle offensive line injuries. They put the right tackle, Abraham Lucas, on IR. They're going to be without their left tackle, Charles Cross. Let me think about how I want to word this. Anytime a team is missing 2 starting tackles, it's obviously significant. I don't consider their tackle tandem to be like anything to write home about. So maybe like overstated in the drop to the like the backups there. Safety Jamal Adams is going to miss the game as well, but I still really like Detroit in this matchup. They're without their left tackle, Taylor Decker, which would be an issue against a lot of teams in the league, but in my opinion, not an issue against Seattle. I think the Seahawks are going to have some of the worst pass rushing rates in the entire league this season. And if Detroit was playing someone else without their left tackle, I would strongly consider the opposing team, depending on who the edge rushers were there. But I just don't think Seattle can get home here. Now, a lot of what's being talked about in this game is like the overreaction, right? The look-ahead line was 3. Is this line warranted based off the Seattle injuries? Are we putting too much stock into the Lions winning against KC in week 1, which was like 1 million dropped passes, pick 6? I still think that this number is short, and I don't think it's necessarily an overreaction. The Seahawks lost to the Rams last week. While it was like surprising, we've kind of known the Seahawks were overrated, like going back to the second half of last year. The defense is bad. It just can't get pressure. It can't stop the run. like this was a Cooper Cupless offense last week that basically moved the ball at will. And I think Detroit, even with the Decker injury on the offensive line, is going to push this defensive line around. Like, I think Detroit does what they want on offense in this game. And then it's just a matter of whether or not Seattle can answer. And with 2 starting tackles down, they're going to have to pass the ball. Now, it's not apples to apples. Like, the offense struggled big time when their tackles went down last week. You have a full week to prepare for that now and come up with some sort of game plan to mitigate that in some capacity. But I just don't see the Seahawks being able to match scores in this game. My number is closer to 6. Again, not a super big edge, but yeah, I $75 there. If I had to play the total, I'd play the over as well. But lots of opposition in this one, lots of back and forth. Number got bet up early in the week, came back down, kind of betting up again. There's a very split game from what I've seen so far. What about 4.5 minus 110? It's pretty much the exact same thing. So you can go ahead and play this for a 3/4 unit as well. And that's it. Okay. On to our next game. So far 2 games locked in. Colts, Seahawks, and we're going to Bears and Bucks. So market on this one currently sits at 2.5 minus 106 at Pinnacle, total of 40.5. All right. Full unit play. Tampa Bay minus 2.5 minus 106. Very similar. I think a lot of people fixated on what the look ahead line was in this game. I've talked before about how I don't put a ton of stock into the look aheads per se. Smaller market, could get a couple thousand down at different individual sports books. But I think that the market has really overpriced the Bears. We saw this last week with the Green Bay Packers, but they've been downgraded certainly in market this week. I don't think they've been downgraded enough. I think the Bears are really, really bad. They're without their starting right guard, Nate Davis, today. That's going to weaken them a lot up the middle, where they can't really be weak against the Bucs. Their left guard, Tevin Jenkins, is currently on IR. They're missing another cornerback today in Josh Blackwell. Kyler Gordon is on IR. The cornerback depth is just not great there. I think injuries are playing more of a factor than people realize with the Bears. Now, on Tampa's side, the rookie D lineman, Kalia Kancey, is out, as is starting cornerback Carlton Davis. Now, remember, Tampa lost Sean Murphy-Bunting in the offseason, so cornerback depth is more of an issue this year. Carlton Davis being out is big. But I would argue that it's not much of a factor against a team like the Bears, who cannot push the ball downfield. They just don't have a quarterback that can consistently make these throws. The Tampa offense last week really, really struggled out of the gate. Second half, like misleading box. All the advocates of Chicago this week, a lot of the talk has been about misleading box score last week. The Bucs really deserve to lose to the Vikings. And that's true. They did. However, this is a different matchup in its entirety. Like Tampa early on last week, they were getting blitzed a ton. That's kind of the thing with the Vikings defense this year. Brian Flores, Baker Mayfield was blitzed on 47% of his dropbacks last week. That was higher than any other quarterback in week 1. When he wasn't blitzed last week, Mayfield had the top passer rating in the league. He was top 10 in EPA per dropback. He was very good. 12 of 18, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. And the Bears do not blitz. They can't really afford to blitz because they don't have the corners to keep guys one-on-one. And I think that's a good offensive matchup for Tampa Bay. One thing we saw in the second half of last week as well, they played with a lot of pace, which really helped them move the ball against the Minnesota Vikings. So is Tampa going to score like a ton of points? Probably not. The offense isn't good enough, but the Bears defense is really bad. There's a reason this team has covered 1 game in their last 11 going back to last season. They've lost by 16 plus in 4 straight going back to last season. This is just not a good football team. And in order for the Bears offense to have success, they need to be able to run the ball. Well, good luck with that. I mean, the Bucs have had a very good run defense for years now. Last year was a bit of a drop-off. Remember, Vita Vea was hurt for some of the year last year as well. I still expect them to be top 5 efficiency against the run this year. I just don't see this being a good matchup for the Chicago Bears. I think this number should be closer to 3, if not 3, should be 3 in my opinion. And yeah. So that's it for that one. For a pick'em pool, what would you do if it was Bucs 3.5? My actual number in the game is 3. I would play the Bears at that. But generally speaking, if you can lock in your picks on Sunday in a pick'em pool, just use the market and kind of just go from there. You'd probably be one of the few people in your own pool doing that. And that's a pretty decent chance for success. It's a little bit tougher to run these middles, Connor, when you're paying 20 cents on one of the sides. A little bit more challenging because that makes it more expensive and kind of prices you out in some of the situations. Okay. That's 5 games so far with 3 picks. I think we're going to go 6 games with 4 picks in all likelihood. Buffalo and Las Vegas. Okay. Market has settled here, 7.5. So money on the Raiders, not a ton. Like when you think about where the line was roaming earlier in the week, around 8.5, 9, you're kind of going through 8, somewhat dead. I don't want to call it dead, but like definitely not a key number. I do have a very, very small edge on Buffalo, but at over 47 plus 100, this is a 2.89% edge for me. I will lock that in for a standard play. A lot of this is predicated on the Bills offense, which I think last week was just an anomaly. The Jets defense is very good. Like it's just a very good defense, one way or another. We have a very clean injury report for Buffalo. Aside from Von Miller out on the PUP list on defense, like I'm going to be someone who really just didn't care how Josh Allen looked in New York last week. This is going from one of the best defenses in the league to absolutely one of the worst. And you might say, they held the Denver offense in check last. Everyone holds the Denver offense in check. It's been happening since Russell Wilson was there. And honestly, the Broncos were way more efficient than people probably realized last week. It's just that they weren't on the field for much of the game. But the Raiders defense gave up a 47.6% success rate to the Broncos. Their EPA per play was also bottom 8 in the league last week. It's just not a good defense. Chandler Jones, in my opinion, a little bit overrated as a defensive lineman now, but because they don't have much talent all around, as he works through some personal issues, that's a pretty big loss for them. So I expect the Bills to move the ball. Forget about the Jets, the interceptions deep down the field for Josh Allen. Like that's very uncharacteristic of him. He doesn't throw picks down the field all too often. Now you might be concerned about the Vegas offense with Jacoby Myers out with a concussion. That means that DeAndre Carter is going to have to step into an elevated role there. But Jimmy Garoppolo has always been good playing from behind. He's very good in that type of game state. Pretty effective last week, especially on third down. Now, are they going to compete? Like, are they going to convert at the rate that they did third down and fourth down last week? Probably not overall, but I still think that there's enough holes in the Bills defense that if Vegas starts to trail in this game and has to throw it, they can have some success throwing the ball. So overall, just think that this number being key at 47 should be above that number. And if again, line shopping, 46.5 minus 110, solid there as well. But I see this as an over game. Someone asked me earlier this week whether or not I was concerned about all the unders last week. Somewhat, but my gut is that it's a one-off because of the shortened preseason, lack of quarterbacks starting in the preseason. You now have that extra week of practice. Quarterbacks have a game under their belt. I would be surprised if we see something like we saw last week with a ton of low-scoring games, but I really do think the Bills are good for 30-plus here. For those who have access to team totals and just want to play like the Buffalo Bills team total, that's totally fine as well. Pinnacle has a 28.5 over plus 121. I like that quite a bit. I just stick to the main markets here on the pizza buffet, but those are alternatives if you wanted to as well. Once again, I would ask, smash that like button down below if you can. It really helps people find our content in real time. Help support the show if you can. I'm happy to do this every week, but obviously do want to grow it over time. So if you could just take 2 seconds, smash the like button down below, that would be much appreciated. If you're not subscribed to Forward Progress, hit the subscribe button as well, and also turn on notifications so you get notified whenever we go live over the course of the week, as we do have content Monday through Friday and Sundays of every single week. Take a sip of coffee here. What's in the cup? It's very clearly just a Starbucks coffee cup this week. There's no denying it. Houston injury reports coming in. As mentioned in the chat, Stroud active, which we expected to see. One of my biggest concerns for Indy would be if Stroud is forced to leave the game and Davis Mills comes in. That might be something worth monitoring as a live in real time. All your bets will lose if you do not hit the like button. I love when you put that juju on people, Ryan. Yeah. I mean, all your bets might lose if you just listen to me every week as well. So it's not necessarily, you know what I'm getting at. All right. KC and Jacksonville. Okay. Let's keep going. Let's keep the run of plays going. KC -3, -109, $75, 1.9% edge at this price. Yeah. I guess this stems from me being a little bit under market on Jacksonville. I faded them last week, lost. Don't get me started on that loss. I mean, the sequence of events that need to happen in order to lose that game were ridiculous. Anthony Richardson gets injured at the 1-yard line. Gardner Minshew comes in for 3 plays, can't score. Anyways, it is what it is. I'll get to the injury information quickly after I talk about this game in full. Obviously, Travis Kelce expected to play. That's big. Chris Jones is in. Seems to be on a snap count of like 20 to 30 plays. Either way, that's actually worth something. Regardless, it's half a game. Now, the Jacksonville offensive line injuries, as they looked earlier in the week, did not materialize into like them being downgraded hugely on the offensive line. Looks like Luke Fortner, Brandon Scherf, both who were on the injury report this week, are expected to play today. Now, obviously, they're without their left tackle, who's suspended. So what looked like a pretty rough injury report for the Jags has improved. That's why I think you see the Jacksonville money that pushes this back down. But I just want to continue fading Jacksonville's defense. They don't have the pass rush. They don't have a secondary. They did nothing last week that was going to show me that this is some sort of elevated defense in the offseason. When you think about last week against Anthony Richardson, I mean, there was 3 times where the Colts were like turned it over on downs inside Jacksonville territory. Plus the 3 turnovers, like that's 6 drives essentially that ended in a turnover. And somehow that game was within reach for them for a long time. The drops on Thursday night football for Kansas City, like forget about them. I mean, it's possible that it can happen again. Is it probable? No. You get extra time to prepare for this game. Team that Kansas City's had success against in the past as well. I'm just not at this number. I'm a little bit higher. And that's even with the upgrades on the Jags offensive line in terms of the amount that they like Fortner and Scherf likely playing. So that's it. Kansas City Chiefs in that one. A few updates. So David Bakhtiari looks like he's out. We can confirm that. Yes. So I'll just go through the injuries that were pointed out here. Yeah, so I'd mentioned this in the Lions breakdown with me liking the Lions. Taylor Decker is a great player. I don't think it matters a ton in this matchup. Quentin Nelson in, that's a little bit of a surprise. Upgrade Indianapolis. in my opinion. I guess the market's steamed them already. Yeah, Sean mentioned like if Davis Mills gets in, Texans win, you're bang on. That would scare me for sure. No impactful inactives for the Jags other than their left tackle suspended, but I just kind of pointed that out, and market kind of corrected on that, so to speak. And yeah, Bakhtiari is officially out. All right, on to the next game. So we got lots of plays so far. I'll actually just do a quick recap before we get back into it, just so anyone who joined late can see what we got going on here. But KC -3, -109, 3/4 unit, over 47 +100. Vegas, Buffalo. Detroit -5, -104. Indy +1, -104. I'll get that money line locked in at +102 as well. Just want to get through the rest of the games. And that what you guys all saw that on the stream. There's no funny business happening. Tampa Bay -2.5, -106. On to the next game. Baltimore and Cincy. I mentioned off the top, there's going to be a lot of plays today. I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if it's a bad thing. But yeah. Really quickly, what's the worst number you'd play KC? You play KC -115. So at -109, I have a 1.92% edge. I typically like to play anything that's 1% or greater. So 113 would be my cutoff. I mean, technically it's good to like 117. But that would be my cutoff. All right. Bengals and Ravens. So this is like right at my cutoff right now. So line is -3, -117. That looks like best number in market for Pinnacle. And I'm going to play that for $50, half unit on the Bengals here. When you think of Bengals Ravens, you probably just think like, give me the underdog of a field goal. And, I kind of get that, why some people might think that, and that might be appealing to them. But I don't think the injuries have been factored in enough in this game. Since he's clean, like injury report is clean for the Bengals. I'll talk about last week's game, but injury report's clean for them. Baltimore, yes, Mark Andrews returns. They're without Ronnie Stanley, their left tackle, Tyler Linderbaum, their center. Again, you have to take into account the backups in these situations, which are not like severe downgrades. So left tackle and center being injured, definitely big, but not massive here. It's defensively, Marlon Humphrey not ready to return at corner. Marcus Williams also out. Like those are big blows to a Ravens defense that I don't think is very good. Now, Bengals last week, were pathetic. 9.7 yards per drive. They didn't get a first down on 10 of their 15 possessions. It was a bloodbath. Browns defense has shown that they can do this against the Bengals very consistently. It's a team that gets a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They have had a recipe for success against Cincinnati for a long time. Burrow didn't play in the preseason, obviously with the calf injury. There's a lot there that I just don't expect that to be the Bengals offense going forward. So I think that this is a spot where we see a correction. Big downgrade on defense, injuries in the secondary. Good luck against these receivers when you're down two starters in the secondary. I think Cincinnati's going to score in this game. Forget about the Baltimore defensive performance last week. It's very different against CJ Stroud. Offensive line missing a bunch of offensive linemen. Very, very different. I think there's going to be more shots downfield from Cincinnati. I have concerns about the Baltimore offense rate. People don't realize, you look at the final score of Ravens-Texans last week, and there's going to be no alarms. The Ravens covered the spread, right? Everyone the Ravens, whatever. Offensively weren't great. They were really bad offensively. They just could not get it going consistently. I'm not 100% sure yet that Lamar Jackson is going to succeed in this offense. They're really changing things up this year. They're trying to play faster, trying to be more of a downfield threat. But I don't know that that's necessarily going to work for them. We at least saw some growing pains against an average to slightly above average Texans defense last week. So I think this number is just a tad short right now. And again, a play on another game, but I think Cincinnati here. All right, let me just catch up. Yeah, Hopkins in for the Titans. We got that. Cordero Patterson inactive is a surprise to me. Not that it's going to affect my opinion on the game, but I think he was expected to be he was expected to be in today, or at least to return. And okay, gun to head, Daniel Jones or Geno Smith. I'm not a fantasy football guy. I don't play fantasy football anymore. I've stopped doing that for years. I just don't have the time or the patience to do so. If you're asking me about actual quarterback, which one I would take, I would more likely take Daniel Jones. Just because I think that I would take Daniel Jones. Total and Cincy, no opinion. I have a slight lean to over 46 plus 101. But it's not within the range of playing. All right, next game. Speaking of Daniel Jones, right? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more to go on this board today. I've been talking for a long time. I'm going to fire through the games that I don't have a strong opinion on. This is kind of one of them. It's down to Giants 4. Total is 40. I guess this is going to be like the fade the public type of game where people will bet Arizona. There is no world in which I'd bet Arizona at this number, personally. I think that they're terrible. We have to see about Budda Baker as well. They added him to the injury report later in the week. He's got a hamstring injury. That'd be a pretty big loss if he can't go. We also have to see with the Giants with Andrew Thomas. I doubt he's going to play. Like, reading the tea leaves, it doesn't sound like they're going to rush him with his hamstring injury. But the Cowboys were the worst possible matchup for Giants last week. Daniel Jones got pressured on 28 of 42 dropbacks. So what happens when you have a bad offensive line and your left tackle's not 100%? You are going to get killed by teams that can get pressure. The Arizona Cardinals pressure rate last week is one of the most deceptive, deceiving pressure rates you will ever see in the history of the NFL, because it was built off of Sam Howell holding the ball way too long. Anyone who watches tape, which I kind of mix in to my process on a weekly basis, Howell had receivers running wide open, but for some reason or another, just held the ball and didn't get it out quickly. So I think this is a very good opportunity for Daniel Jones to bounce back. If the Giants O-line can't hold up in this game, then they are going to have a very bad year. Because Arizona just does not have pass rushers on this roster. Ultimately, I do think it's a good bounce back spot, but I wasn't high on the Giants going into the year. I make this like closer to 4.5. Again, lean Giants, the edge is negative 1.2%. It's not within my range of playing, but I think like Arizona's final score last week is a little bit misleading in the sense that they did nothing offensively. They had a 28% success rate. Basically, Josh Dobbs was only better than Joe Burrow last week, to put it into perspective. And I mean, the Washington defense is better than the Giants defense, but I just don't have any faith in Arizona whatsoever. Okay, I think Jay Nava, you've asked me this a couple times. What's the lowest minus EV play you would pick? Or like no bet on Zona, even there's plus EV. I'm not sure you are understanding the definition of minus EV and plus EV. There is no plus EV on Arizona, in my opinion, right now. If I thought that there was positive expected value, I would bet them. That's what I bet. And technically speaking, like, your plus EV is determined by the way that the market moves and the closing line. You're very unlikely to get closing line value at this point anyway. So I think the terminology is off a little bit there, and you're going to want to brush up on that a little bit. San Fran and the Rams didn't come remotely close to playing this game at any point over the course of the week. San Fran minus 7.5 plus 103, best price in market at Pinnacle. Total between 45 and 46, depending on the book. No opinion on side, no opinion on total. Just really briefly, yes, San Fran has dominated this matchup for years. They're fully healthy. They're a machine. But the spreads in these matchups for years have not been 7 and 7.5. They've been 1.5, 2, 3. Like, go back several years, and they've been lined much lower than this. So essentially, like, the market has caught up to how much better San Fran is against the Rams. The Rams had a very impressive showing offensively last week, but that was the Seahawks defense. Like, the Rams were 15 of 19 on third down. That's not going to work against San Fran, like consistently getting to third down and trying to beat them. So very different story here. I just think this is a really good price on the game. Don't really want to break it down much further than that because I don't have a strong opinion. I think the most likely outcome in this game is San Fran probably wins by 7. I could see them winning by margin, but I didn't come remotely close to having a play on that at any point over the course of the week. New York Jets and the Dallas Cowboys. Market has settled in here at 8.5. Pinnacle best number on the Cowboys. Totals come down a lot. I have a 0.5% edge on the New York Jets. I'm not going to go ahead and play that, but it is an edge on New York. If you want to like really push the limits, then go ahead and push it. I don't think the downgrade from Aaron Rodgers to Zach Wilson is as big as a lot of people thought it might be. And I don't think the market thinks it's like as extreme either. That's not because I'm high on Zach Wilson. I'm not. I think he's terrible. I just thought that people were really overrating Aaron Rodgers as a 39-year-old quarterback coming off of a year where he produced an EPA per dropback that was 26 in the league heading into the year. The Jets defense can keep them in every game, in every single game. You have the Cowboys without Brandon Cooks at receiver. You're going to see more Jalen Tolbert and Kevontae Turbin today. Left guard Tyler Smith isn't going to play. It seems right guard Zach Martin is at serious risk as well. The Jets defense can wreak havoc. Like, the Cowboys offense had to do nothing last week. There was a pass to CeeDee Lamb where he was wide open down the field. That's basically all they had to do. They had a short touchdown drive, couple field goals, and a punt when the game was like somewhat still in hand in the first quarter. The Jets can get home, and I think what's going to happen here, based off of knowing this Cowboys coaching staff for a while, granted different coordinator on offense now and Brian Schottenheimer, but I think it's going to be a very conservative game plan. They're going to play to not shoot themselves in the foot. Lots of running the ball and field position type of game, and just hoping Zach Wilson makes more mistakes than Dak Prescott, which I think is likely, but also does not lead to Dallas winning by margin a whole ton. Last thing I'll say about the game is if we do actually look at the screen one more time, the total's 38.5. The spread is 8.5. Typically speaking, when you have a low total like that, the dog is going to be very appealing. I would not bet and could not bet the Dallas Cowboys in this game. Wish we were just getting a little bit of a better price on the Jets, but I do think that the Jets are the right side in this one, despite the no bet. Next game we will go to here is going to be Washington and Denver. Very similar to the last game I just talked about. So Washington plus 3.5 minus 104 would be a 0.7% edge for me. That's kind of not in the range that I need to play it. I'd like a plus 3.5, plus 100-ish, or just like a few ticks down. I don't like either of these teams. I'm not high on either of them. I think you have to be clinically insane to be laying 3.5 with the Broncos offense right now. They did show signs of being able to at least be more efficient last week, but Russell Wilson's average pass went 4 yards beyond the line of scrimmage last week. That was the shortest of any game in his entire 190 game career. He threw 6% of his passes 15 yards downfield. They don't stretch the field. It's a very inept offense that's content to dink and dunk. They get Jerry Jeudy back today. That's going to help a lot. I'm very interested to see if he can break some tackles, be like a yak threat, maybe even separate downfield. But Washington defense is fairly good. And I don't know what the ceiling is on the Broncos offense, where you want to bet them as a favorite. Dating back to last year, their last 18 games, they've scored 16 or less in 12 of those 18 games. Now, not apples to apples. Sean Payton's there now. It's very different. The concern is obviously Sam Howell. Sam Howell looked terrible last week. Terrible. He just had no pocket presence whatsoever. Didn't throw the ball. Couldn't get out of his hand. Like, he was shell-shocked. That was a home game against Arizona. This is a road game at Denver. So I can see this being like a disastrous type of performance. Like, Jimmy Garoppolo played a great game last week to win in Denver. Quick decisions, got the ball out of his hand to his receivers, was accurate, picked up third downs. I do not have the same faith in Sam Howell to do that. Ultimately, I would never lay it with Denver here. It's Washington or nothing, but it's just a little bit below my threshold to play that. Is Sean Payton's brilliance going to be wasted with Russ's contract? Very possibly. Let's see how it goes today. I mean, they had Tim Patrick on IR, no Jerry Jeudy in week 1. Like, that will impact any team. But yeah, like, generally speaking, that's going to have an impact. Sam Howell versus Sam Howell. Decent comparison, actually. Although it's pretty, I mean, listen, as bad as Russ has been, probably safe to say they have the better quarterback in this matchup based off of what I saw from Sam Howell. Dallas's offense wasn't good last week. It didn't need to be, is the reality of the situation. It just didn't need to be. Things change very quickly when you're up by a lot of points very quickly. Needed plus 10 to get to the window with the Jets. I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I agree, but Zach Wilson, good for 2 turnovers and 350. That's the one thing about Aaron Rodgers. He's a little bit more safe with the ball. So I could kind of agree with that. I'll get into Survivor right at the end here. Let's touch on the last game here today, which is the Patriots and the Dolphins. Another game this week that I just did not come close to playing, really. It's kind of hovered in this range. It got up to 3 at one point, was bought back, and we're sitting at the 2.5, the total of 46. There's really a lot to take into account here. Looks like Teron Armstead's going to return. He practiced on a limited basis all week. He should be good to go tonight. So that's a big boost for the Dolphins' offensive line. The Pats' O-line is like somewhat in shambles. It looks like Cole Strange will be back. Maybe Mike Onwenu as well at right guard. I believe Trent Brown, their left tackle, has not been cleared from protocol yet. Devontae Parker is likely out at receiver again. Defensively, we're waiting to see if Jonathan Jones plays. Remember, Jack Jones is on IR for them. There's just a lot of moving parts in this game, and it's been hard to decipher, like over the course of the week, who's going to be in, who's going to be out. Now, Tua's had a lot of success against the Patriots. Why I think that's important is a couple of those matchups came in week 1, where Belichick basically had all offseason to prepare for him. Belichick had all offseason to prepare for Jalen Hurts last week. Pat's defense looked good, but they play a lot of single high coverages, cover 3, cover 1. That's not really a good way to beat the Dolphins, in my opinion. Like, leave your quarterbacks and one-on-one man on the outside. And I think that's one of the reasons that Tua's had success against this team. Very interested to see if we can see a repeat performance out of the Patriots offense, which looked very good with Bill O'Brien. The Dolphins defense struggled. Vic Fangio obviously comes over. It's Justin Herbert, very different story. But just a lot for me to parse here. And I'm just like right on market pretty much across the board in this game with what I think we're going to see for tonight. So no more bets on that one. For tomorrow night, I'll get into it, and I'll kind of break down both games at once and just bring them both up on the screen here. So we got the Panthers and the Saints, -3, 39.5. Browns and Steelers, 2.5, 38. Lots of low totals, as you can imagine, off the offensive performances last week. At Carolina, +3, -104. I'm like half unit play right now. So I'll go ahead and lock that in. And that's going to be the only thing for tomorrow night that I'm going to play. The JC Horn injury is big for the Carolina Panthers. CJ Henderson's going to start opposite Dante Jackson now. They do have some depth. Troy Hill, Jeremy Chin. They get DJ Chark back at wide receiver. On offense, Saints are healthy. They're one of a few teams in the league that's like clean bill of health. I know Carolina offensively leaves a lot to be desired. But I wasn't really all that impressed with the Saints last week, especially the way that their offensive line held up against the Tennessee Titans. Carolina can generate pressure. We saw that especially with Brian Burns last week. And we've had a lot of these games where like Trevor Penning as left tackle, disastrous last week. We've had a lot of these games in Derek Carr's career where he doesn't have a lot of time to throw the ball. He's out on the road in this like favorite role where he's expected to win, going to face a lot of pressure. And I just don't see the Saints winning by margin in this game a whole lot. The one thing with the Panthers last week will kind of go under the radar, like their success rate closer to 40%. Atlanta's was only 36%. The game was closer to a toss-up, but Carolina had the 3 turnovers, and that kind of makes them look like more of a blowout loss in Atlanta last week than the game really played out to be. So I'm not here at this number. I'm just a little bit shy of 3. I'm like in a 2.75-ish range or a little bit closer to 2.5. I think Carolina is good for a half play. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, looks like Amari Cooper is in serious danger of missing this one with the groin injury. So it's going to be Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Marquise Goodwin picking up the slack there. Big thing for me is the Cleveland defense is healthy. Juan Thornhill expected to return. That means they have all 11 starters on D. Big injuries for Pittsburgh. Deontay Johnson, concussion. That means Allen Robinson moves into the starter role. I think Allen Robinson is completely washed. You might get some Calvin Austin and Miles Boykin as well. Cameron Hayward on IR on the defensive line. Great run stopper. That's an issue against the Cleveland Browns. That number to me is probably right around where it should be. Not going to break that down much more than I have right now. I will get to questions here as we go through that. Appreciate that. So again, Forward Progress, 8 p.m. Eastern time every Sunday night. Myself, Clive Bixby. If you just stay on this stream right till the end, when we're done, it'll redirect you directly to the stream for tonight. You can hit the notification bell there. You'll get notified when we go live. But we got some I didn't bet them myself. I don't bet. This is just like me giving subjective opinions on games. And I think anyone who followed that last week is holding some absurdly good numbers there. Let me just see if anything else has come into range that I could up my bets right now. Washington 4 minus 110. Let me just see if that's a play for whoever asked in the chat. So that is 0.82%. It's just short of a play for me. 0.82%. You could do whatever you want to on that one. Oh, there we go. It's at Pinnacle now. Let me go lock that in. Just saw the whole screen move. So yeah, we'll add that to the mix, and that's going to move to minus 104 at Pinnacle, which makes it a play. So really quickly, if we got a refresh here, it might take a second or so. But when Washington hits out to plus 4 minus 104, I will go ahead and lock that in. You guys will see that in the My Pick section later on. To recap, tons of stuff today. Tons. KC minus 3 minus 109. We could probably up that at this point to a full unit if you haven't played that yet. Over 47 in Buffalo. Cincy minus 3. Again, same thing. Could probably be up to a full unit right now at that price. Detroit minus 5. Indy plus 1. Tampa Bay minus 2.5. Carolina plus 3 tomorrow. And a small play coming in on Washington. So tons of money coming in on Baltimore now. Should be noted. Screen is lighting up. I strongly disagree. We'll see who's right, who's wrong. But that's big money. That's moving that price out right now. Okay. Indy down to pick. How is that not a massive play? The only way this is a massive play or can be a massive play is if you make Indy a 3-point favorite on the road. Because anywhere else short of 3, it's not going to be a massive play. So that would imply that like Indy today is 4.5 to 5 points better on a neutral than Houston. that's going to be a really tough sell job. So that's how it's not a massive play. I mean, Dallas does qualify as a good teaser piece because you can get them through 7 and 3. But yeah, it's, I mean, I don't love it. Also, early in the year with these teasers, like you're reliant on the market being like entirely efficient. It's not yet. Like no one knows in game 2 of the season. This is very different when you, like if you have this exact same line in week 12 of the season, I'm much more inclined to tease that team down than I am in week 2. What else are we doing here? Survivor play. Okay. Depends on your pool, right? Like if you've seen the circa millions ownership, Buffalo is massively owned relative to everyone else. There's a reason for that. Dallas plays on Thanksgiving this year. They're going to be like a 7-point favorite, maybe more in that game on Thanksgiving. So there's people are opting to save Dallas for Thanksgiving and use other teams instead. In your regular traditional survivor pools, you may not get that exact same thing with people waiting. So you want to try to project ownership as best as possible. I think whoever you like of Buffalo, San Fran, Dallas, just go with it. Whichever team you think is most likely to win. All those teams have future value. You can use either of them down the road at some point or another. I wouldn't get too smart with like a Denver or a Detroit. I do think Detroit money line is good, but ultimately don't have to galaxy brain it this early in the year. And if you're in multiple survivor pools, you have the option of splitting things out a little bit more. Recap with Rams Niners, zero opinion on the game whatsoever. Talked it through a little bit. Yeah, this has been like the big thing. I heard Chernoff mention this a bunch this week about like size and physicality mismatch against the Rams. Again, like it's priced into the number at this point, in my opinion, right? Like again, going back to last year, they played the 49ers are 2.5-point favorites. Now 7.5. I think that like the market has finally corrected on that game altogether. Anything else here? I'll hang around for another minute or two. If we got any more questions, I can go through them. No, I mean, I mostly played Buffalo in survivor pools this week. I don't care about like saying it or whatever, but I mostly played Buffalo. Even as a Cowboys fan, I'm very scared about the game today, generally speaking. Haven't seen look aheads at all yet. I'll talk about this a little bit more tonight. Again, when we get those lines up tonight, I'll give my opinion on which way we think that the games will go, one way or another. Buffalo teasers, I like. Total's a little bit higher than you typically want in those types of games, but like I would prefer to tease Buffalo than I would Dallas, even though the total's much lower in the Dallas game. It's weird, but I just feel more confident in that. I just don't like early year teasers, and that's kind of why I've avoided talking about it altogether. As much as I would love to agree with this, I strongly disagree. We'll see after today, but like I think this whole like Josh Allen is cooked. The Bills can never win with Allen. I think it's so overplayed right now, like ridiculously overplayed. Sorry guys, did not have time for player props today. That's unfortunate. A few things of note that I do want to get to is, of course, we do have all of our content here on Forward Progress. And again, tonight, 8:00 Eastern time, just hang around on this thread or on this video, when it's done. It'll direct you right to that video. You can hit a notification and you'll get alerted tonight when we go live. Also, a bunch of other stuff that we got going on. Hammer HQ, another YouTube channel we have. We're doing an NFL trivia competition using draftparty.net. You can enter a live leaderboard, a leaderboard to play against our content creators as well. So make sure you check that out on the Hammer HQ. Our 1 versus 16 matchup happened this week. Eric Eager versus one of our producers, Zach Phillips. You can go over and check that out. And of course, if you haven't subscribed here yet, just subscribe, like the content. It goes a long way. It really helps us out. I hope you guys get value out of this on Sundays. I'm not sure it actually provides value, but I understand the demand to do Sunday morning NFL video. Last thing I'll say, of course, guys, like I cannot stress this enough. Pinnacle limits are 100,000 on a lot of these games right now. Sportsbooks are very confident in their numbers right now. Try to bet earlier in the week. Don't go nuts on Sundays. Don't chase losses if you have a bad 1 o'clock. Play responsibly. We obviously all want to win, but we obviously all want to have fun as well. and don't want this to bleed into our regular lives. So play responsibly. And if you're in Ontario, sign up for a Pinnacle account. Use code HAMMER, HAMMER. You must be 19 plus, not available in the US. Appreciate everyone who tuned in. This has been the Pizza Buffet, live on Forward Progress, here, part of the Hammer Betting Network, powered by Pinnacle. Everyone, good luck with your bets today. I'll catch you at 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight with Clive Bixby. Peace out.